Hello again, welcome back. We're going to continue our discussion of D3 and data visualization. In the previous video, we created a simple document, HTML document. We loaded up the D3 library and we used the data here, which was just an array of numbers, and we created a bar graph using D3. These elements here were created as HTML elements, and D3 is happy to do that for us, right? Let's do another document using SVG. So let's imagine we wanted to create a document with SVG. So what is SVG? SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics, and it's it's basically a language very similar to HTML, but it allows us to draw shapes and things, where HTML allows us to draw documents made up of text and paragraphs and headings and images and things like that. SVG is a document format that lets us create a document full of circles and rectangles and squares and paths and shapes and things like that, okay? So it's a language for drawing pictures, right, or drawing shapes rather than a language for displaying images and text like a book, right? SVG looks a lot like HTML, and you can write it directly inside an HTML document. And usually what you're going to do is you're going to write it this way. You're going to create the SVG tag, and you're going to put all your SVG elements within the SVG tag, right? Just for fun, I'm going to open up Sketch. This is an application for drawing. And let's make a new Sketch document here. And let's say I wanted to draw something in Sketch, so I can draw a circle, and then I can draw like a couple more circles here. Maybe I'll just do a simple drawing. So let's do 3 circles. So I'll put one here, and then I'll copy it and I'll put it here, and then maybe the circles, maybe I want to give them a color, so I'll set the fill. I'll give this one a red fill. And maybe I'll give it I'll give it a black stroke and set the stroke size to 3. And I'll do the same thing here, right? And you'll see why in a minute, right? So I'm going to set this guy. Let me make them all match, right? 3 pixels there. And then maybe here I'll make this fill, I'll make it kind of blue. Actually, that's not very blue. There we go. That's more blue. And maybe I'll make it partially transparent. Oops, wait, I made a mistake there. I want to set the fill color. So let's set the fill color here. So I'll make it blue. I'll make the partially transparent. Let's do this one as transparent too, just for fun. And then this last one, maybe I'll do this as green and make it kind of transparent, right? So let's say this is my drawing, like I want to do some kind of color test or something, right? So I did this in Sketch because you can see that I drew shapes, and you can see what those shapes are and the qualities of the shape. Like it has a fill, it has a stroke, the shape is a circle, and these shapes have a position on the page too, right? So you can move one, like this one could be over here or closer to the center, right? Sketch has an option where if you select I'm going to actually just group them together with Command G, but if you select some objects and you click on them, you can say copy SVG code, right? So let's do that. So I drew these things here in the Sketch interface, but if I copy the SVG code, let's see what it looks like in our HTML document. So I'll paste them here like this, and now you can see there's the same drawing in the SVG document, right? And the drawing that I made in code, in SVG code, looks like this, okay? And you can see this looks a lot like HTML. So the SVG tag begins here. They gave us this extra tag at the top that says like, hey, this is an XML document. It's kind of like the doc type, but for XML, right? So SVG and HTML and XML are all part of the same language. Like they have another language that they all derive from, so they're all very similar. So actually, as far as we're concerned, we can get rid of this thing, so that actually doesn't, do anything for us, right? And then you can see I have this SVG tag, and it has a width and a height, right? And then it has a view box, a version, and some other things, right? Okay. And then inside there, there's a title and a description. And, I can actually get rid of that, and I can get rid of this comment. This is a comment just like you would have in HTML, right? And I think, actually, to be honest, I think I can get rid of most of the things here, okay? The only thing that goes wrong is it doesn't know how tall the SVG document is. So maybe I'll set the width and the height, and then I'll just get rid of all these extra ones there, right? So that'll be simplified, okay? Hey, that looks pretty good. And then what do I have inside here? So if I thought like of an HTML document, I thought, it's got the head tag, it's got the body tag, it maybe has a div and a paragraph and a heading, right? In an SVG document, right, we write the SVG tag, and then everything inside the SVG tag has to be in the SVG language. And here I have a G tag, which stands for group. Okay, so I have a group, could be like a div in SVG language, right? So I've got this G tag here, this group, and then it ends over here, right? It's got an opening tag and a closing tag, and then the opening tag has some properties, right? And then inside there's another group, right? And actually, I think I can get rid of one of these because I actually have two of them, right? So Sketch kind of adds some extra stuff. So maybe we don't need all that extra stuff, but let's even simplify this, right? So here I've got a group, and then inside the group I have 3 circles, and then every one of those circles has some properties. Now, the ID and the is kind of like Sketch gave those to the circles, and maybe they're not required, right? And then I have this fill opacity, so that sets the transparency of the circle. And then I have the fill, that's the color of the fill. So this one is red, right? And then it has a CX and a CY. So all of the, properties for the circle, or the features, right? Like the location, center X and center Y, that's what the CX and CY stands for. And the R is the radius, right? So the radius and the X and Y location of the circle is written as attributes in HTML. So in HTML, when you add something like ID equals viz, what you're doing is what we call this is an attribute, right? So this is the name of the tag, and this is an attribute. And you can have as many attributes as you like on an element. We can give it a class name. We can give it a data ID of something, right? You can give it some value. How about data number, right? So you can make up your own attributes if you want. In SVG, the attributes are very specific to the item. So circle has CX and CY, right? And R. So another shape like a rectangle does not have a radius, right? If that makes sense, right? Because it's not round, right? Okay. A shape, like all shapes, might have a fill, and they all might have a fill opacity, right? And so all of these attributes determine like how this circle is drawn, okay? So let me actually, so I did that example, and we could have written all of this code, and we could write like very complicated drawings, and it would end up with like a lot of SVG code. Normally, we don't want to write the code ourselves. We want to use a system to do it. And actually, D3 will do that for us, right? So maybe I'll do this. I'm gonna comment our previous D3 example right here, right? So that's all gonna go away. And let's do a new D3 example with SVG. And I have some notes on that in the lesson for today. So you can go to the lesson and take a look at it, right? Let's scroll down to, well, actually, let's come back to this loading data in a moment. Let's just draw the SVG first. Here we are, SVG, right? So you can go to this section on SVG. And so I just kind of talked about all this stuff here. These are the properties that we have. We can use SVG as our main tag. We can draw a rectangle or square with rect. We can draw a circle or an ellipse. We can use G to group shapes. We can draw a line. So a line is a straight line, and a path is a complex line. It can have curves in it, right? A polygon is a polygon, right? So it can be a multi-sided shape, okay? So how do we get our SVG to happen, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to add an SVG tag. So you saw like all of the SVG special tags like that draw the shapes, they all have to fall inside of the main SVG tag. So I'm going to make an SVG tag, and I want to display it inside this document here. So maybe I'll put it here like this, right? And I'll put a comment here. So I'll say SVG, objects here, right? Okay. So that's where our SVG objects will end up. And where we're going to go with this is we're going to write pretty much the same code we have here, except instead of appending divs, we're going to append circles or other SVG object shapes, right? And instead of selecting our div, we're going to select our SVG tag, okay? So let's scroll down a little bit. So, SVG, we might draw a circle in it like this. We kind of saw that, right? And a circle has a CX for the center X, CY, center Y, R for radius, and fill is the fill color. Okay, so let's make a couple shapes just for fun, right? I did a thing here to make some random shapes, but why don't we just add our own data like we did in the first example, right? That'll be easier. So let's start. So I'm going to go down to my script tag, and I'll start with d3.select. Oops, not set internal. Don't you hate it when sometimes it just like code hints you just totally the wrong thing? Let's do select. Oops. And what I want to do is select the SVG. And my SVG tag here has the ID of SVG. So I'll put the ID name in here. And then on the next line, I'm going to say .select all. And what I want to do is inside this SVG thing, I want to select all the circles. Okay? And then let's add some data. So let's do .data. Maybe I'll even just copy the data that I have here, right? Maybe we can use these numbers to set the size of the circle or some other feature, right? So then we'll do our enter. So we're going to enter the data, so to speak, right? And then we want to append some circles, right? So let's do append, and I want to append a circle tag. Okay, so essentially we're gonna select this element, we're gonna look for all the circles inside here, and we're gonna append circles to that element, right? Okay, great. So let's start setting our circles here. So for each of the circles, we want to be able to set the attributes, right? So here's kind of an example. You can't read it there, but if you're reading the notes off the web page, you can follow it here. But essentially what we need to do is we need to set the attribute for every circle, right? And that's the attributes are things like the CX and CY and the radius, right? So let's set those right now. So I'm going to go to the next line here, and what I want to do is I want to set the ATTR, that's an attribute, and I want to set the, let's do the R attribute, which is the radius. And we'll make every circle 100, maybe let's make it 50, so it'll be like, 100 pixels in radius, okay? And then let's do, let's set the CX to be, I don't know, I'm not sure, let's do 100 px for one of the circles, right? And let's do attribute dot, remember our SVG drawing is 500 by 500, so maybe I want to put a circle in, let's put it close to the center, right? So we'll make it like 250, right? Because that's center X, right? So it should put the center at 250. Let's put the CY at 250. So at this point, our circles are actually going to be stacked up one on top of the other for now. We can move them somewhere else later, right? So there's our circle there, and then let's give it some like a stroke and a fill, right? So let's do the fill right here. So let's say attribute dot or parentheses fill color, right? And let's set the color to red. You can put a keyword. Any color that would work in CSS will work. And actually, a lot of CSS styles apply to SVG also. So let's see. Oh, there's our red circles. Now I got 3 of them, and they're all stacked up. Okay. So let's imagine, or actually, I got like 7 of them, right? They should all be stacked up. So let's imagine like maybe I want to change the size of these and the position based on the value here, right? So maybe instead of doing the X value, maybe we'll do this. Remember, D3 is going to also accept a function or a callback for the second parameter. So whenever you have a value, you might name a value for style, right? And then, you know, like for width, we provided a callback, and then the callback returned the value. So anytime we have something like this where we have some named value, usually it'll take a function here, and we can return the value for that function. And then when we have the function here, the function will usually take the data. So I could put n here for the number. And the second thing is it will also give you the index. So for the first value here, it's going to give me n of 5 and index of 0. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, let's return, how about, let's say, well, actually, let me do this. We'll do I times 50 pixels, right? So now I've made 7 circles. The first one is at 0 times 50, 1 times 50, 2 times 50, right? And I can space them out across the across my page, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess the 7th one is going off the edge, right? Let's set maybe the radius also based on the value here, right? So maybe the radius should be a function. And again, we're using an arrow function, so I don't need the curly brackets if my return value happens on the same line, right? Let's actually, just for fun, I'm going to write this one as multiple lines, right? So if we did this as multiple lines, we'd have to include the return in here, right? So we'd have to make sure to include it. This in return is implied, okay? So let's get our number. So I'll get the number. Maybe I need the index too for some reason. And now I need to return the radius. So let's return, how about the number n times 10, right? So we'll set the radius based on the size or the value of the circle. Oh, so now I got circles that are all a different size based on the number, okay? So this video has been going on for a while, so let's, and we kind of went through SVG. We talked about SVG here, and we've kind of made a simple SVG drawing. Do me a favor, explore this for a while and experiment with some of the values, right? So try some different colors, try some different sizes and positions, try and use the number here, make a callback, maybe try setting something on the Y value to set the position based on the number, okay? And then we'll continue in the next video, and we'll talk about more about how SVG works and some of the other options we can use. And we'll also cover how to load data. So we'll build this from a JSON file or a CSV file of data, like maybe the Titanic data, for example, okay? So thanks for watching, and good luck with your projects.